Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about my next video. I am going to talk today about the home visit we had to do before getting started, and then the med screening and a little bit of the legal. So we had the home visit is a social worker coming to visit your house to make sure it's a safe environment. So basically she came through the house and she did a tour, like we showed her into all the rooms of the house, and then she had typical questions for us, like what do we like to do in our spare time, just our family dynamic in general, what we do for work. I mean, there was quite a few questions, and we sat talking for a while, and Riley actually really liked the social worker. She wanted to be held by the social worker, which is kind of funny because usually Riley doesn't like strangers very much. She's a mama's girl and likes to be held by mama, especially when new people are around. So she really took to the social worker we had, and then she was going to leave, and Riley wanted to leave with her. Then once we got the all clear from the social worker from the home visit, the next step is the medical screening. So that is where we actually go out to New York. Well, it's Connecticut. We go to Connecticut to the clinic that is going to be doing the embryo transfer and everything, and that doctor that's going to be seeing me, they want to do the pre-screening and make sure everything is good. So then we scheduled that meeting for the beginning of October. So just again, brief timeline, we actually matched in August. It was about mid-August that we matched. So it took a little while to get the social worker there for the screening, and then schedule and book the flights to go out there. So it was like October 7th or so that we went out there. We flew out to New York City on a Monday. It was luckily a direct flight, and that's always really nice to have direct flights. So we went, it was on a Monday, we got to New York City, we got there around 7, and then we had to take an Uber to the parents' house. You'll notice I'm not saying the parents' names. We're keeping their identity private at this time. So I'll just call them mom and dad or the parents, so just FYI. So we actually decided to stay at their house. They invited us to stay at their house, so that was really special for us. Because I've talked to people before who have done surrogacies, and that generally they just get put in a hotel. But I'm so happy that we actually got to spend time with the family at their house. So once we Ubered to their house, which was probably about an hour Uber ride to get to their house from the airport, the mom opened the door and we basically said hi, and then we hugged, and it felt like we were family already. Like it felt like we were family, like we had just been a long time since we've seen each other. It was just like we had that instant connection. And before we went out there, I mean, we had been talking on the phone and via text message and or email. So I mean, we had been talking quite a bit. So we kind of were already getting to know each other. So it's not like they were complete strangers that we just showed up at the doorstep. So then that night they made us dinner, and we stayed up late and talked a lot of the night, and really got to know each other. And again, it was just like it was meant to be. We were so elated just to be there in their presence. So then the next morning we went to the clinic, which was only like 20 minutes from their house. So we headed off to the clinic. At the clinic, then it starts a lot of paperwork. Taylor and I both had a lot of paperwork to do. So we started with that, and then we both had a blood draw, urine sample, typical blood workups, which when I got my blood draw, I apparently hadn't eaten enough for breakfast, and I passed out. And if you know me, I have definitely done that before when having a blood draw. It usually only happens when I was fasting, but I was not fasting, but they figured since the flight was so quick and we, were there the very next morning. I wasn't well hydrated after the flight. So I did pass out and they had to bring me the whole juice and all that. So that was a little embarrassing. I always get really embarrassed when that does happen. But then Taylor did blood work. He had no problem, of course. So for the most part, when we're at the clinic, we're in like this little conference room. So then, they'd pull me out to do the blood work, and then they pulled Taylor out to do his blood work. And that's where we're like kind of doing all the paperwork, and they're telling us to make sure we read it. So then they'd like leave us in there to look through the paperwork, and then they'd come back and check in on us, the clinic that is. So once we did all that, I also had to have an ultrasound just to make sure everything looks good and everything checked out. I was told I have a beautiful uterus. So then all the four of us, Mom, Dad, Taylor, and I, got to be in the room together with a social worker, and they just wanted to make sure everyone's on the same page, we all have the right intentions, and we were probably only in the room together for about 10-15 minutes max. So again, I go back to my point, I'm so happy that we actually got to spend the night at their house the night before to actually get to know each other, because had we got put in a hotel that first night, I feel like I would have been a little disappointed that we didn't actually get to talk much the day of, because after the appointment we basically flew home that same evening. So also there, when we're still in the conference room, when it's just Taylor and I, well, they take Taylor out of the conference room and leave just me in there. I have to do a psych eval, which was like a computerized test, I guess you would say. It was like 300 questions, so I had to, of course, do that on my own. And then that was the last thing we did at the clinic. So Taylor got to come back in the room, which, we were basically done at that point. So then they said we could leave. We had signed all the documents, did everything that we needed to do. And once we were done at the clinic, we found a little local place to eat. It was just right down the road. We walked a couple blocks and got lunch, because by this time it was about 1:30 in the afternoon, so we were quite hungry. The clinic did give us some snacks, but I was ready for a nice lunch, so we went and found a little local diner, I would call it, and we had lunch, and then we took an Uber and just headed to the airport, which we headed to the airport quite early, but we didn't have enough time to like see anything in the city, so I didn't want to cut it too close and not make it back to the flight on time. So we just headed to the airport and just kind of hung out there for a few hours, because it was a few hours before the flight left. So we hung out, and then we ended up getting dinner before we got on the plane. So it was a very quick trip. So Monday, flew out there. Tuesday was the actual clinic day, and we flew home Tuesday night. So it was a very fast trip, but it was perfect, because we got to meet the parents, and again, it was just fantastic. We were informed that everything came back good after the medical clearance. They, have to go through all the results a couple days afterwards, and we were informed, I believe the following Monday, that we were cleared, we were good to move on to the legal, which with surrogacy, obviously you are in a contract, that way everyone's intentions are in the right place, everyone's covered, no one's taken advantage of. So basically Taylor and I have a lawyer, and the parents have a lawyer. So they drop the contract, they send us the contract. So Taylor and I kind of looked over it before we went to the lawyer, which we went to the lawyer's office within a couple days, but like we read through the full thing just to see what all's in it. So we went to the lawyer and discussed with her to see if there was anything we thought should be changed. And once she got those, she sends it back to the parents' lawyers, and then they go back over it, make sure if there was any changes, if they say yay or nay, and then they send it back saying, you know, it's ready to sign. So then we went and signed. We went and signed in front of the lawyer. You can do it in front of a notary, but we just went back to the lawyer's office because we thought that would be easiest. Yeah, once everything's signed, the contract's sent, and you're good to move on to actually start the process. Ours got a little pushed back. We were waiting for the embryos to get moved. They were at one clinic, but they needed to move to the clinic that was actually going to be doing the transfer. So moving the embryos takes a little bit of time. So we were waiting on that, and then COVID happened. So that pushed us back. So we were hoping for a March transfer, but the whole COVID situation, it kind of backed everything up. So it delayed the embryos getting transferred to the right clinic, and then it just kind of it put everything on a standstill. So they were like, we're not going to do any transfers at this time that weren't already scheduled, and since ours wasn't technically on the books yet, they said we're just going to wait. It took a couple months to get everything going back again. So in May, we were able to get the embryos transferred to the correct clinic. So then we just had to wait for my cycle to start at the end of May / beginning of June, which is where we are right now. The clinic needs to know when my period started. So it started on May 31st, which was Sunday. So I was to let the clinic know on day 1. So I sent them an email, and they emailed me, you know, back that night saying that they ordered the meds that I'll need to be on, which is the injections, and there's some pills. So they emailed me saying they ordered those, and a nurse will be calling me to let me know how to take the medicines. So that leads us to today. So everything got ordered, and now we're on to the next steps. This is where I'm going to leave it for today, and thank you very much for watching my video. Bye!